Welcome back to the Self Indulgent Podcast. I'm your host, Mariah, and it has been a while. Maybe not for you, but for me, it has, because I actually haven't sat down by myself in front of the camera in a month. There's lots of reason for that. I went 2 weeks on hiatus, not posting because I just didn't have time to edit. Then I went to New Orleans to visit my best friend. Then I filmed an episode with my best friend. So by the time you see this, that'll have been out. And I'm really excited for that. It is April 1st. Happy April. Quarter two. It's not even fathomable to me. Like, I just don't understand how it's quarter two. I don't have a business necessarily, so quarter two hits differently for me than others for sure, but still, it's like we are a quarter of the way through 2025, and while that's insane, it's also like, oh God, so much has happened. A lot of us are still recovering and dealing with all of the things in the first quarter. So, how are you? Where are you guys at moving into this next part of the first half of the year? Time is like, it's going for me. And so I was gone for vacation, and then I had a hard time when I came back from vacation, which is why people say they need a vacation from vacation before they go back to work. I definitely had a hard go of it coming back, but I think I also was having a hard going of it leading up to it. So we'll get into a lot more of that later and like my think pieces on some of the stuff that's been going on for me. But I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be back sitting here in my little corner with you guys on this first day of April. Oh, happy April Fool's Day. Has anybody fucked with me today? I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I think I've avoided. My dad texts me now that I'm thinking about it, about the new Spider-Man movie, and now I'm questioning if it was an April Fool's joke or not. Because I was really excited for the Spider-Man movie, and if it was an April Fool's joke, I'm going to be really upset. Anyway, let's catch up. Since it's been a month since I sat here by myself and talked to you guys, some themes that have come up for me over these last few weeks has to do with like one, sitting with and understanding the things that I'm feeling. Two, parts of self. Like, so we would call that in psychology, there's different ways and different theoretical orientations around the concept of like parts work, doing parts work with self, and like self doubt and self worth, and kind of how those intertwine together. That's a large portion of things that have come up for me over the last month. This last month was heavy, actually, to be quite honest with you, even though I was on vacation. I just recognized that before I left on vacation, it was hot and heavy. It was super tense. My week before I left was so jam packed that I don't know how that happened, why I did it to myself. Leading up to that, my weeks weren't like that. In hindsight, I probably could have tackled certain things before. I had a doctor's appointment that got canceled, but I had to go out to New York. Just so there was lots of things right before I took the flight. My schedule was booked and packed with client stuff. At school, I had classes, and I think I actually skipped classes that week. I wanted to film. An episode on intimacy was the last time I filmed and sat down with you guys. That was right before I flew out because I flew out on a Friday. And so I didn't have time to sit with myself and reorient myself to things. I am understanding that I need a baseline level of routine and stability because when I don't have that, I feel very dysregulated. It does feel like a little all over the place for me. And I went on vacation and I was able to ease into the break and like, yes, awesome. I got to spend it with my best friend, so it felt great. And then I came back and I had a few days left before like stuff started again, but I was super anxious. Even though I gave myself a window before I got into the swing of things, there was so much anxiety. There was so much going on personally for me. I went back to work and then it was like, boom, it was time. I had this huge presentation that really stressed me out. Lots of stuff was coming up for me. And that was all the first week back from vacation. The Tuesday I came back, I did not film. No, I did film the Tuesday that I came back, but I filmed the episode with my best friend. So that took some pressure off because it was easier. It was a different setup. But there was so much, like I thought I was going to be able to edit and I just wasn't able to. I didn't give myself enough time to prepare. By the time the next Tuesday came, I just let myself chill out. talking with my therapist was like, it's interesting because you do a good job at when you recognize that, wow, this was like a significant amount of things. Like, you need time for yourself, you need time to process. She was saying that I do a good job. And she brought up this other situation that had happened because she was like, this was the other time where you were able to do that for yourself. And you were like, I need to pump the brakes. I need to breathe. She then asked me, how can you find sustainability? And is there a way for you to sustain that? It was an interesting question. And I had to process and think about it quite a bit because I actually don't know what that looks like, right? Like, that's why it happens the way it does. Things build up, build up, build up, build up. And then I'm finally in a place where I can let myself breathe in that and sit in that after things build up. Because before I would crash out for days and then feel so guilty for not being productive. I do think it's gotten better over time, but it's still something that I'm struggling with from a sustainability standpoint. Like, how can I, instead of letting things bubble up and pop, even though I'm handling the pop better and I'm giving myself what I need, is there a way to be more consistent and sustainable and finding the little signs, paying attention to the little moments to be able to catch it sooner? It brought up this really good conversation about comfort versus discomfort. My homework this week was to first, we listed out all the things that like I was not like that caused discomfort for me, which was also kind of hard when I think about it. But and my homework for the week was to start keeping track of the things that I do find comfort in. That was really interesting. The first 2 days after that, because I had some other stuff going on, I was just like, wow, I'm uncomfortable a lot of the time. That was a hard truth that I had to like sit with myself with, to understand that you feel discomfort a lot. So it makes sense that you kind of build, build, build. But are you also recognizing moments when you do feel comforted and what helps with that and leaning into those things more? And I think that's how I can make it more sustainable, right? The more I can recognize when I do feel comforted, when I do feel grounded and calm and peaceful, what am I doing? Who am I around? What's happening? And just all these other things that can help me identify it. So that is something I'm trying to be mindful of and work into just being aware of for myself so that I can support myself as things are happening and also find better routine. It's very clear to me that going to the gym really helps me feel in routine. So if something unexpected happened, like this week, my car needed to go to the mechanic for a repair, so I had to call out of internship. I Ubered to the gym and had Jordan pick me up during his work break because he works from home. If I didn't do that, I don't know if I would have gotten much else done during the day. And it was nice to have the day off to play to catch up. I didn't want to let it just go by, and it dysregulates me, right? It's like a day off, right? Aside from the expensive repair. And there's some positiveness that could come with that. Like, I can like take that back and use that time. But I was very anxious because it was not what I had planned for the week. I want to be in routine. I want things to happen consistently so I can get used to it. But that didn't happen. Instead of falling into a lull and getting stuck for the whole day of like, what do I do? Like, I had to do something. The gym is my tried and true. It will get me going and get me moving. And so I did that. I went to the gym. I did some stuff on my laptop. I made lunch and then I was feeling funny. And the body is so funny because then I got a really bad migraine and my vision was a little weird. It was after I came back from the gym. I felt fine. My energy was up. Jordan's like, you're probably exhausted and maybe a little dehydrated because I had a really busy weekend. And I was like, no, I don't feel tired though. Like, I don't feel tired. And so I ate, my vision was fine. Then the migraine came on, and I was just like, I need to sit the fuck down. So I did do that. And eventually I did start to feel better. I drank some water. Like, I kept drinking water. I did the things to help with all that. And as time went on, I did start to feel the tired and the exhaustion, especially after such a busy weekend. That was more balanced for me, taking care of myself, more routine, and giving myself that space in more consistent ways. So that's one aspect of things that I'm trying to implement and be aware of. Something else that has been on my mind recently has been The way that we look at our emotions and how it can really take over you, right? And your behaviors and the thoughts and that cycle and circle of thoughts, feelings, behaviors, blah, 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 all that stuff. I'm finally leaning more into feeling the emotion and just accepting whatever that is. And I've recognized that might sound like really obvious and basic to some of you out there, but the way that I grew up, that was not the messaging that I was receiving. If I was upset about something and shaking my leg, it was very much like, stop shaking your leg. Because it was an expression of the emotion that I was trying to bottle and trying to hold. I was like, oh, you have an attitude, you have this, you have that. Instead of being curious about the feeling and the emotion, it was just like, why are you acting like that? Stop acting like that. You're dramatic. You're doing too much. Who are you talking to? Right? Like all these things that are definitely generational, like curses as well. And part of the reason why it's perpetuated. And so to me, it is not obvious and basic to accept the emotion that's coming up and be curious about it, as I am sure it isn't obvious for a lot of people. And that was part of my hiding and my dishonesty towards others and the people pleasing that kind of developed through that because I was not being honest with others largely. I would have all these thoughts in my head, all these feelings in my head, and a lot of sometimes they would be strong, they would be intense, but nobody was ever curious about it. And so it sat with me, and I felt horrible about it. Like, I really, really any emotion that we name or label as negative, right? The easiest one that comes to mind is jealousy, right? That's such a like, we really villainize that emotion, like, "Oh, she's just jealous," like, "Oh, this," or in relationship, like, we see it as toxic, right? When somebody's feeling jealousy, it can be those things. But I think there can be extremes to all of our emotions, right? Like, there's this spectrum, there's this fluidity of emotion and how it presents and shows up and how we behave. The emotions are valid, the behaviors are not always, right? Your emotions are always, 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 always valid. And we need to be able to accept them and sit with them and see them. But the way we act out sometimes is more like, okay, like especially if you're hurting others, that's when it becomes the issue. When there's harm and hurt being done to others, then we need to take accountability. But the emotional piece is important. If we saw each other more and our emotions ourselves more and we're able to share them and be vulnerable, the behaviors, the intense harm and hurt that we can do to each other would subside. It would get better because we are no longer creating shame and guilt just because somebody's feeling some sort of way. And it's really hard in communication. I wasn't raised to have that level of communication and be vulnerable with people in that way. So for some people, it is like a no brainer of like, hey, this is kind of like somebody coming to me saying, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling. And it blows me away. I think it's super impressive. So coming back to jealousy, to just be more clear and give a better in-depth explanation, for me, if I was feeling jealous about someone or jealous, whatever case is, right? Like jealous of, say, jealous of like the attention or praise somebody else gets. I would never dare tell anybody about that. There's several reasons, but even just that's the secretive nature of that feeling sends so much messaging that I'm still working to unpack. It is hard for me to feel like I can be vulnerable and open about how I feel about other people because I'm terrified that they're not going to like it and I'm going to lose them. All the messaging though that sends of like, oh, you can't tell anybody that you feel that way. Don't tell anybody that. Keep that to yourself, right? It's doing so much. The messaging that I've internalized through doing that and just never telling people how I really feel, it's hard. I'm working on it. And it is probably something I'm going to have to work on for a very long time. Aside from worrying about people leaving or losing people for the emotion, it's just like, then I'm questioning, why are you feeling that way? Like, why are you That's ridiculous. Like, then I'll justify and intellectualize, right? Like, this is horrible. Don't think that way. Obviously, this is happening. It's not their fault. So it's trying to rationalize with myself. This is how intellectualizing works because it's not allowing me to continue to feel the feeling when there was nothing wrong with feeling that feeling in the first place. But that's how intellectualizing works. I rationalize, I make it logical. I like poo poo my feelings. And then I convince myself, like, oh, okay, you've thought this through. You understand why it's happening. So you don't have to talk to nobody about it. Like, now you've got it in check. Keep it pushing. And that's not helpful. It perpetuates some of the reasons why I don't feel seen, known, and connected to others. And it's sneaky. It's a sneaky pattern that I have for sure. And I'm sure some of you can relate to what I'm talking about. I think that's something else that has come up in the last few weeks in more obvious ways where I'm just like, wow, like we need to stop vilifying these emotions. We got to stop doing that. No, no. Let's talk about them. Let's sit with it. And what does that mean? Now it's hard though, right? Because I'm not ignorant to the fact that you're not going to be able to do that with everybody. Not everybody is going to be in the place to be able to hear you. I have a fear of doing it for a reason because it was reinforced that I should not be doing that. So I'm not ignorant to the fact, like, you obviously have to be selective, I think, with who you're that vulnerable with. So you can have these corrective emotional experiences. And I have been having corrective emotional experiences, and it blows my mind every time. Every time the mind is blown. I'm like, wow, this is how you're responding to me? Huh? And sometimes I still won't believe it. It's still not enough. And so you just be selective, I think, if you're as you're doing that. One, start being honest with yourself about your emotions, explore them, sit with them, catch yourself in thought when you're judging it or intellectualizing it and trying to rationalize it. If it's somebody you really care about, that some feelings are coming up, like if it has to do with somebody else and it's somebody you care about and love and want to be close to, then I think it's worth considering being more vulnerable. And if they don't take it well, then it, unfortunately, right? Like it's like you have to reassess, is this a person for you? Because you do deserve you deserve people to meet you where you're at. And to be that vulnerable with people and receive that as well and get the support, validation, and empathy that you deserve. So finding those people are really important and leaning into them. But you can't find them unless you try. It is trial and error, and it's scary. That is why I'm just now practicing it myself. We're working on this together real time. I have not, it may sound like I'm preaching to y'all, and because I get on my soapboxes and really sound very firm in what I'm saying. And also, it is very much a work in progress for me. I'm oftentimes working on a lot of these concepts myself. You're getting these thoughts and ideas when they're coming into my consciousness and awareness, but I'm still learning how to practice. Number two, right? That's theme number two from this month that I've experienced. The last part will tie into what I had just talked about, the idea of the different parts of yourself. The way that we're brought up is very much like there's this one self. We are one person, we have one identity. And in reality, that's not the case, is the idea of this parts work stuff and theories that go behind that, because it's essentially saying that we are very versatile, we're multifaceted, and it can be helpful to label different parts of self to understand self better, especially when there's like, it's getting to the point where people are dissociating, right? So people talk a lot about like multi split personalities, multiple personalities, which was renamed like more dissociative identity disorder because, the split personalities, multiple personalities didn't quite encapsulate like what's really happening. And so DID, this dissociative state that people get into, and it's like cutting off from self in different ways and splitting in negative ways. How can we look at the different parts of self and understand them all? And then they will integrate, and how to show the different parts compassion so it's not confusing in your head, right? So it's like people are like, how can I be this way and then I do things like this? I've seen my clients beat themselves up often. Can we identify, okay, this is your inner critic talking? Sometimes those parts are protective. And so I just was thinking a lot about how there are parts of me that feel like they fight each other sometimes. It's very confusing, upsetting. I beat myself up for it. One side wants to do things, grow, and try new things. And then there's this other part that wants to hide and is scared and doesn't and gets really anxious and doesn't want to try anything, right? Like that, those sound like two opposites. Like, how the hell are both of those versions existing within myself? But I think there's a reason why they're both there and they both exist. And one is trying to be protective based on past experience, right? And a lot of the ways that we move through life as humans is like we have this predictive quality, right? We can try to envision what the future will look like. The only problem is that a lot of the basis for how we envision the future is very much informed by the past. And so this is why it might feel like it, or if you're dealing with people who don't change or like you get frustrated with or you all these things like at the end of the day, people's past are strongly informing the way that they see their future. And therefore, they are behaving in a day to day basis based on their past and the information they received from their past. Like that's adaptive to an extent, or it was supposed to be adaptive to be able to say, the last time I touched the stove, I burned my hand. So I'm not going to touch a stove again. That's an adaptive way to have your past inform your future and the learning that you do until it becomes inhibitory and you're uncomfortable and it creates suffering when you're torn in all these different directions and you're kind of like, what the fuck? Who am I? Right? And that's a huge question. It's a huge question. And I get the question. I've asked the question for a very, very long time. And now that I'm thinking about it and speaking to you about it right now, I don't like the question. I don't like it. It is not helpful. There is no right answer to that question. Who am I? There's no right answer. And we need to ask ourselves, what are we looking for from the answer? We're not looking for the actual answer. We're looking for the feeling that we think we're going to get from getting that answer. It's about safety, security, ground, peace, inner peace, and just like feeling a sense of purpose and contentment. That's what you're looking for when you ask the question, who am I? Those feelings. And so I think it's less about who am I? Like, first, we're all versatile as fuck. That is not a fair question. And yet so many of us suffer in that question. So ask yourself why you are asking that question, what you're actually trying to feel and look for in asking that question. Because once you come up with that, and it might be a lot of the things I just listed, you need to find other ways to feel that way because it starts with you. You have the power to manifest those feelings. The same way that you can think yourself into a bad fucking mood. You can, not that I'm going to sit here and say, yeah, think yourself into positivity. No, that's not at all what I'm saying. However, there are ways to, and that's the work, right? That's the work, finding the ways that you can create that sense for yourself. It comes back to the emotions, just accepting your experience and your feelings as a human being makes life feel lighter, right? Because you're not going to feel peaceful all the time. If you chose to be here, you're a human, you live on earth as a human, and you think you're going to have peace all the time? It reminds me of something that I read where it's like, you have two choices, right? You could try to go live this enlightened life. Which life are you going to live as a human? Are you going to live the enlightened life where you cut off from all these things, just meditating and existing and like you just live in this contentment state, right? Or are you going to live an active life in that doing what we do, like what I'm doing, right? Like being active in the human experience and playing with the field and like what we can and can't do. And if you're going to be active and play in the field that way, you're going to feel a wide range of things because you cannot control your environment. There's so much out of your control. The goal then is to be more tolerant, make the window of tolerance larger, make that window wider, keep expanding it because you'll be more accepting, more compassionate. The level of tolerance that you'll have, things won't send you crashing out every 5 seconds. Things won't be as impactful to your sense of self. You'll be able to find more, maybe more moments of those emotions that or those feelings that we labeled before. Like you'll be able to find a little bit more peace, right, in the day to day because your window of tolerance has expanded and you're accepting of more hard stuff. And you're just like, okay, I got this. Like, this sucks right now. It fucking sucks. And you can sit in that if you want. It fucking sucks. But then it's like, okay, I have to get up and I have shit to do and I'm going to keep going. And I acknowledge that this sucks. But now what? This is a lot of what I've been thinking about. It has been an interesting month, and that's kind of been what's running in the background of my mind as I'm also confronting and dealing with things day to day. And I think that I'm also in this transitioning period of like, I also recognize that, we're not supposed, like, we're not, yeah, life is a journey. We're going to heal along the way. But I also just don't want to give the impression that like I'm like you need to be healing all the time and doing deep hard work all the time. I don't want to give that impression even though I know that like we talk about hard things and big concepts. I think breaking it down in the day to day is more important. It's the little things that really build up to make some change and make shifts in your life. Like, I don't expect myself or any of you to wake up tomorrow and say, whoa, my window of tolerance is through the roof. I'm unstoppable. Or that I accept all my emotions. I love myself forever. That's not real. It is little things and little moments over time that you choose to show up a little differently. And that is the point. And then you'll see and feel the difference. Even if it is just something like noticing a feeling that's coming up and saying, oh, yeah, you're feeling that. What's that about? It's okay to feel that. Do you want to tell someone about it? Just the small questions that we ask ourselves. But instead of working with ourselves in these smaller increments, we jump to these like, because everything feels like once you feel like you're suffering, it really becomes big. It becomes this huge thing, right? Even to like my routine and like when things build up as I'm stressed and I pop, right? It's like the same concept. Then all of a sudden we're asking, who am I? It makes sense that we end up there, but that's not the question. That's going to really bring relief. We need to get more curious and compassionate in the smaller micro moments so that we don't end up looking for like this big, huge answer to a question that is just like not fair and helpful to you anyway. That's everything I have for today. I would love to hear your thoughts and any comments that you have. What's been going on for you? Like, how are you feeling about your first quarter? What's coming up? Anything that I've said today that is like resonating or that you, even if you want to challenge like how the way you're thinking about it, let me know in the comments below. If you're listening to this anywhere you listen to your podcast, if you like this episode, please leave us a 5-star review. Don't forget to follow so you don't miss an episode. And if you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you guys next week. Bye.